This here's Clint Cowpok. I've been drafted to direct the Powers Alliance, the next thrilling chapter in the amazing saga of Alt Transformers MUSH meets Robotech. The last exciting episode, which we just watched, been posted here on March 1st. The Autobots and Decepticons went to Area 51 and found out all about the Warbirds and Sect, and also the other one, Sect, and not Sector 7, Sect, which was the comic book version. Save Earth for Cybertron technology, and the other one was the Warbirds, and there was another one, but yeah. Anyway, so Powers Alliance is a combination of mostly Rob Powers short stories that were not used in Corrosion of War Without End. We started filming that about a year ago. So yeah, it's been a year. Hard to believe, it's been a year. We were on that show, and so in honor of that, but also because this is season 2, we are returning to some of those characters that show up in this episode. We get to see them again, so we get to see some of them, and you'll be surprised. There have been some changes in some of them, but they've evolved over the years. It's not that they're going to be the same, and some of them are new, and it's all connected. The Warbirds and the other stuff is connected. Yeah, the Kitty Ballerfin and Penumbra are transformed back in that parallel universe, or they're in that perdition thing. They're humans again. They're dead, basically. So they're not around anymore. So the other ones that would replace them would be other ones going on the ship. So we'll see. Also, we'll meet some more of the Warbirds and some more of the bad guys. Find out who stole the SDF ship. Now there's 3 ships. I'm told that there is the one in Tokyo is the SDF-1 ship, basically. Okay, so the SDF-1. The SDF-2, which in Robotech was not really sort of there. It's convoluted. In the cartoon, they fudged it so it looked like the 2 ships were together when Chiron's battlecruiser attacked them, and Lisa Hayes goes onto the SDF-2 and it gets attacked, and then back to the SDF-1 and it gets attacked, and they circle around and they make it look like there were 2 ships there. In the Japanese one, there weren't 2 ships there. In the Japanese version, they were next to each other, and the other ship wasn't an SDF; it was just another ship, and it's different. It's completely different. So in Robotech the Sentinels, they said that they took Bretai's battlecruiser in the American Robotech the Sentinels, and they refashioned it into the SDF-3. So, but the Robotech wars didn't happen in this timeline, obviously. So, but the Robotech people are still born, and they still exist. They came to be in the story. So we have this sort of, and we have the space bridge paradox happening with all the space bridges and stuff. And toward the end of this story, somebody stole the original SDF ship. Now, somebody swiped it. You know, they hornswoggled them and swiped it right out of them from an out of Tokyo. Somebody stole it right at the last minute. And spoiler, if you haven't seen the episode. Well, you're going to be watching this in the making. And so that leaves Ciudad de Fuego is the other ship. That's Chiron/Azonia's ship. But it was decimated and caught fire. They could repair it, I suppose. And the other one was the one we just saw, Area 51 in this episode. That was Bretai's ship, the ship that would become the SDF-3. So it totally works. It's not ready for prime time, though, as Wheeljack discovers when he finds half the people dead and almost no guards. Decepticons have been busy, as well as another previous group, which is playing both sides. In Powers Alliance, we find out the group that's playing both sides and what they're up to. Apparently, has something to do with the Neutral Alliance. That was a short story about powers, and it appeared in one of the books early on because it was a short story. One of the Transtech books, as well as the MUSH. So there's going to be a lot of Rob Powers with it. There's going to be some Cowpok, believe it or not, toward the end. All these remaining 5 episodes have something to do with that and with Cowpok. The last 2 are all from our archive. The last 2 from our stuff. Yeah, so we're sprinkling in our stuff now. Yeah. But there's a few more in with the other ones, the other characters. There's a few more. We'll tell you about them later. There's the Fallen Kingdom. Next one's the Fallen Kingdom. That's got a few more people. It's got Davidson and Thicoline and Waterman and John Crapper and Cowpok. Okay. Waterman and John Crapper and Cowpok. The next one is Cowpok, and other ones. MC Kim, fuck you, Marlo, fuck you, and the rest of the cast. MC Kim. So yeah. So I'm just reading the list here. We got the names of the next episodes of Powers Alliance. Hopefully in 10 days. The Fallen Kingdom, another 10. Invasion of the Maximum. It should be the Maximum Invasion is what that should say. Shared Hallucination 1 and 2 are the finale. The movie finale. Yes. And yes. This is basically a comedy with some drama in it. So yeah, there's hints about the Hunter wedding in the story, which would bring us up to the Sentinels. But our version, because the events of Robotech War did not happen the same way. Completely different. So that way we can wipe the slate clean if we do anything else about Robotech. We can do other thing in the future after all this and say, okay, it's not, we don't need to worry about any of the continuity because we can just say, oh, this timeline is different. The Robotech War didn't happen. The Centrati didn't invade. They were defeated by the space virus. The Invid didn't invade. They were also defeated by the space virus. The Masters are still out there. Some of the Invid came back, but they were affected. Some of the Masters were there. But yeah, it's a different animal that way. And they could come earlier or later or maybe not at all. Who knows? But yeah, we will be seeing the Warbirds again and the other characters. And those old Veritechs. I understand that one of the most popular videos on the reviews channel is a review of the Jetfires that got painted. And they're finally in the story. It's mainly because they're very fragile. These are Jetfires from 84 and 85. And they're painted up to look good, but we don't want to damage them any more than they already are. So yeah, they're not gonna. They can show up and stand there and go, we're gonna beat the Decepticons, but they're from the 80s. They're not like these newer Siege ones. And even though some of the newer Siege ones do tend to fall apart. Mine don't because I haven't abused them too much. Yeah, there are some of the. I guess some of the car ones tend to fall apart. I don't really have their version of Prowl and their version of Blue Streak, so I don't know what they're like. I do have their version of Hound. I haven't opened it. I do have their Red Alert. I haven't opened it. I might have opened it, but I'm not going to use it. So yeah. So that's basically what's happening next. Next 6 episodes. 5 episodes? 5 episodes. Yeah. Powers, Fallen. 5 episodes. Yeah. We just did 6 of 5. Yeah, I'm certain the Insecticons come back. They're going to be there. We're going to see some other characters that have been helping them out when we see this story. The next one is Power Alliance. Yes, they were supposed to steal the ship. Yes, they're going to do something with the ship at the very end of the episode. This episode. Powers Alliance. Yeah. It lines up with the Powers That Be, which is a Cowpok short story. That's very short. But yeah, nothing to do with Rob Powers in that case. Anacon stories. Yeah, so that's my little take on this thing. I haven't watched the thing. Haven't done one of these in a while. It's not a behind the scenes. It's a making of. And that was a really funny episode. Silly Kelly episode. So, what to do more of them then. Cowpok's got to do the Powers one, so of course. It's not as much Optimus Prime in this one. There's a lot of Optimus Prime in the last one. The only thing that was done in the editing before we put it up was that we did watch it first to make sure there were a few little minor gaffaws. The one thing that I changed in editing was that there was a scene in the ethereal plane after there was a scene where they figure out they've been hornswoggled. I thought that, well, in the real world they should be hornswoggled first, and the ending, your hook ending, is actually them realizing this, and you're introduced to the human Jenna McLeod in the story, or Buster McLeod. Yeah, that's who that is. Yeah, so it's Buster. It's Buster, the daughter of Buster McLeod from the G1 series. That's who that is. So the other Buster is the original. So that ties into the comics nicely. That's what's going on. So she's Buster Jr. basically. Yeah. And she had a sister, who was Bree McLeod in the story. Not show, but kind of loosely based on her. And she died, and she's in the ethereal plane, right? So she meets up with Kitty Key, who's in the ethereal plane as Kicker. Yeah, not just Kicker from Cybertron, but Kicker / Kid from Robots in Disguise. That's the other Robots in Disguise, the other one. With the car robots from 2000. He's that Kicker. Just so you know. He was a human all along. And Penumbra was too. And Penumbra was Dashiell Fairborn. And what was going on there is the original G1 Transformers jumped 20 years in the third season after the movie. The movie took place in 2005, even though it was 1986. So they're like, 19 years later. Everybody's older. Daniel Witwicky. Spike and Carly had a kid named Daniel Witwicky. He's 12. And they went from there. So Daniel Witwicky, if he was 12 in 2005, it's 15 years later, would be 27. So yeah, that's what's going on. And he's in there. Also, yeah, I think that's a windmill it's playing. Anyway, I'm in this version. In the gag scene. Maybe it's a mask though. It's a Scooby-Doo. Yeah. So yeah. So the SDF-2 in Robotech was actually, the Mega Road 2 was built much later, closer to when the SDF-3 was built. In Macross, it was built later as Mega Road 2 for Macross 2 and Macross Plus. Macross 2 is its own timeline and own continuity 80 years later, so it's not relevant. But Macross Plus and Macross, which had the Mega Road, and Macross 7, which has the Macross 7 in it. Different ship. Captain Max. But it would be the SDF-3 and the SDF-7. The SDF-7 would be the Archangel from the other story, if that was connected, and it's not. It's not. So anyway, so yeah, the Flint thing, the Dashiell thing. It's said that Marissa Fairborn from Transformers, Captain Fairborn in the third season of Transformers, Captain Fairborn is said to be the daughter of Flint and Lady J. And Flint is Dashiell Fairborn and Lady J, so they have a daughter. That's fine, except how could she be a captain? She would be 18 and a half years old if she was born immediately after the events of the other story. They never established they had kids. So that's like the sort of a canon / non-canon theory on how she could be a captain. She could really be a captain. Not at 18, unless she was a genius. I did address that in Transtech, so you can go back in Transtech. You can watch that. We did address that. We said, oh, she's just a genius. That was her excuse. It's Wesley, basically. And in this version, and in Space Bridge, the same kind of character played the Queen, the Invid Queen. So now we did a throwback to the other one and showed the one. It's not the Invid Queen. There is a difference. The Invid Queen has a little beauty mark right here. She doesn't. That's the only difference. It's the same figure. Well, it's not the Invid Queen. Yeah, so... Anyway, so yeah, she's supposed to be... But now it's 15 years later and she could be a captain. Also, there was a minor guffaw story that we kept. Admiral Hunter... should be Vice Admiral Hunter at this point. Referred to as Captain Hunter. Oh. Anyway, so... At this point... Yeah, but maybe he didn't get promoted. Because maybe, there's no Robotech war for him to be fighting in to get promoted. So maybe they're just referring to it as that. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so. Yeah, the SDF 1 and 2 in the American one were different. And that scene really didn't make sense if you think about it. Because, like, in the episode, it's like, oh, they're just next to each other, like, back to back. How would that work? Wouldn't Chiron just turn around and shoot the other ship? Because it's right there. If it explodes, it's going to blow up both of them. Well, once our spaceships are destroyed, we'll build the SDF-3. Yeah, that whole ending, like, and not only that, but the fallout from blowing up the reactors on both ships. Not only would have dumped all kinds of stuff everywhere, it would have been radioactive, and the whole town would have been destroyed. So no, in this version. And we've already been over the part where, like, okay, the Japanese ones were not connected. We know Macross and Space Climber Masquerade and New Generation and all that were not connected originally. Robotech connected them. And that the Expeditionary Force and the Sentinels never happened in the other timeline. And the ending of the Invid invasion, that Expeditionary Force is not Hunter's force that arrives. It's Jupiter's section. It's just Jupiter's section. Which doesn't sound as dramatic, but that's who they are. They come back after Mars section. Yeah, to take the Earth from the Inbit. Although the ending is silly in the Japanese one too. They imply that the Gaia of the Earth makes them turn. So they have to go in and fight convince the Invid Queen by talking to her, like they evangelize to her. And somehow that works. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, they talk to her. She gives up. Whereas the Masters one was darker, and it was just like, oh no, they shoot the bad guy. Like that would stop them too. They are clones. Yeah. Does that mean Chiron's a clone? I don't know. I don't think we'll throw in too many more of them. Nods to that so much. Oh, and incidentally, in the credits, if you read the credits, it kind of gives away that wasn't Lang, it was Zand. Laszlo Zand for the books. Lang's assistant, who was working for the Zartan people. Oh no. Yes, Powers Alliance. Okay, we are on the set of the movie, of the next one, believe it or not, already on the 1st March. And it's Clint Cowpok, and these are the Robotechs that are going to be in there. Well, there are going to be some others. Jetfire show up, and some others are going to be in there. They've assembled a crew here, familiar crew. So, yeah, and I'm going to create some confusion there. So let's work this out. Actually, okay, just to clarify, the Robotechs are not to scale with the Transformers, so they can't be the shot. So I want to redo this part right here, where they are just a pan of the robots preparing to go out. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, it's already late here on the set. I'm waiting for the light to fix itself. It's already late here on the set. We're just going to start filming. The Neutral Alliance, it's the first episode, the Neutral Alliance, doesn't have any stuff that takes place aboard a ship. So, not any shipboard stuff. So, but at the end, they rescue Forsyth, who is one of the characters. We're gonna shoot them. We're gonna do all the ship scenes because the ship's not there really ahead of this. So it's page 34. It's the end of the Neutral Alliance. One of the neutrals is rescued to the Regis Maximus to tell them of what happened on Cybertron, presumably while they're still there. So that's what we're gonna shoot. That's a scene that's not in the script, but it's gonna join. The ship scenes can join the short stories. They're not part of the stories, they can join the short stories. So that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, so that's this one. And this is the one on little 34, 36 at the end of that one. So, we'll do that. So, take note that the ship, because this bridge is very elaborate, to shoot the bridge stuff, all the bridge stuff, and then go on. So that's what this is going to be. One continuous take. Be easy to edit that way. Did I record that? I'm not sure if I recorded that. Parting of ways and flaw in the jewel. This is more ship footage. This is after, basically, okay, each one of these acts is, which one of these acts is actually where the 30-minute mark would be in the story. So each one of these ship acts is literally, make it real easy to edit. There's literally at the end of each 30-minute, it's the filler. It's not a filler. It's meant to combine the scenes together. Yeah. So let's do this. So apparently about oh, the hat. Where's the hat? There's a hat. Yee-hoo! Gonna wear the hat. The hat. Okay. So this was footage of the ship about 2/3 of the way through. So this is the end of the Rob Powers part of it. We begin the Cal-Cat part that makes up the last third. Now, the ship was stolen and taken to the anomaly, and it's gone about halfway through the story. So the ship, the Autobot ship crew here's decided it's going to go down to the planet and try to fix things, but it doesn't work. And they're down on the planet, and the mini dinos join them. So it's powers that be, and except the Dinobots, I think that's the next two, and a number of other stuff with the Cal-Cat. And then I'll jump ahead to the end of the story, like I did here, because I want to do all the bridge stuff first, and then show what happened after they figured things out and bad things have happened. So that's what's going to happen. Well, shoot. This was all the bridge stuff I decided to film all on it tonight. I want to get the bridge stuff over with. And, yeah, we set up kind of a crazy story here with all the bridge scenes because this set's very elaborate. So and technically the bridge stuff is not in the movie. Now it is, but it wasn't in the stories. There was no bookends with each one of these being a sort of transition to the next element. I thought that it'd be kind of cool to do that. And also, of course, in the last clip of this one, to have the 3 jet fires on the bridge. They're in the story, so they're going to be on the bridge. No. They're in the story. But yeah, when Draconis has disappeared during the lab scene, during the attack, that was previous in the story. It says in the story, was supposed to be Mindwipe and Zarek apparently attack, and they get Fortress Maximus and they mess with him. And the ship is missing and everyone's missing, and it kind of ends with this like crazy thing going on, and the bridge being less populated, but now the Fems and the Pact wink to the Transtech thing. And mentioning the Carta in there, with G1 Jetfire mentioning the Carta. I think that's an 84 one there. But yeah, they're very fragile. Those original G1 Skyfires are very fragile. The ones that are rebuilt for these models and painted up to look pretty, but they're essentially, it's still an 84 or 85 Jetfire. It's still going to be clunky. And many of the fans wondered why during the eBay days of roughly around 2001 to 2004, roughly, like every single, like, we went out there out of our way to get parts forming Jetfires because Jetfire was always breaking. We wanted to have him be in the Transtech movie, so we got like dozens of them. We went online on eBay and got dozens of them with the extra stuff left over, making the Transtech. We had money to burn, I guess, at the time. We don't anymore, but we did. Yeah, and because it was all volunteer, it was Mark's Cars with Cal-Cat. It's not like we were going to go anywhere with it. So we had Yeah, we bought a lot of parts forming Jetfires that were like in pieces, and dozens of them, and rebuilt roughly 22, 23 of them. And we made an Island Seeker, and we made that's the silver gray one. We made a that's the cat's eye thing, but it didn't have the radar thing. We didn't build that part of that, or it fell off. I don't know where it is. But he's Island Seeker. We also had the Do You Remember Love Macross training aircraft, the Super Ostrich, modeled after the more expensive Super Ostrich. We had the smaller scale one that we were able to put together a Veritech version and paint it up to look like them. We also did some of our own creative ones with whatever was left over. We formed two armies of the Veritechs, the Warbirds, basically, and their enemies, and put them out there. So, but we never did this Rebel Robotech series. Cantrell and Calcat and Cards discussed the Rebel Robotech series and how that would happen and what was in it, and a lot of it evolved into other things. Eventually evolved into Space Bridge. So it evolved. Well, it was a little bit of an endless circle, a little end of the circle. Yeah, the endless circle. A little bit of it in Space Bridge. So we and we decided at the last minute that the Rebels didn't need to be Veritechs, and they didn't look good anyway. We had a brand new Devastator from Combiner Wars, so let's just make the 6 Rebels the Devastator, because then that's how it happened that we didn't end up using the Rebels. So they got put away for years and for into storage, and then we brought them out. But yeah, they are very fragile, and so they can't do any fighting or anything, but they can certainly stand there, look pretty. Yeah, they're a little bit, they're almost to scale with some of the other ones there. They're like, I would say G1 Jetfire there is probably to scale with what they would call leader class now. Definitely, yeah, leader class. So. But Combiner Wars Jetfire there is a Seeker Siege Jetfire there is to scale with the toy as it would have been in the 80s, but that's from 2016, I believe. 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. Well, Siege would have been 2019, I guess. So Siege went 2019. But yeah, that's not one of the fake ones. That's not one of the issues. That is the actual Siege Jetfire. Yeah, and it's worth about the same price as back in the day the Do You Remember Love Rick Hunter ship, which I have 2 of those. There's one with all the armor and one without, and they reissued it in 2002, and I got a reissue of it. But the original 84 one, I have that too, but it fell apart. So there's 2 of them when it got rebuilt into somebody else. So, yeah, they have not revealed who the human pilot in Jetfire in this story is, though. It's not likely to be like just Calcat, because that would be stupid. If I literally show up, break the 4th wall, shatter the 4th wall, and have Calcat show up as Jetfire's pilot. Like, come on, no. No, it's not going to be that. It's not. He has appeared in the background through the whole series as other different characters, but yeah, not that guy. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's this is tonight's what it is, and then we're gonna go back into some little stories. And actually, the first one is kind of it's an adventure, but it's more of a character study. Most of Rob Power's stuff is character studies. So even though they have these 3 ship scenes bookending the whole thing, it's still a character study. Or there are 4, I guess, if you count the one from yesterday. 4. So one in the beginning, one in the middle, one in the 3rd act, and one on the very end. So I think that's what happened there. So yeah, to put them all together. Yeah, so yeah, the different things that are happening to them happen in the story. It's all connected. They're on Cybertron, so this Cybertron is what's going on. Yeah, so the ship is Cybertron. Yeah,
Because space is more interesting than being on Earth for a couple of episodes. Although we had fun on Earth. We did. I don't know. But yeah, we got to go out in space and find the bad guys. And there's gonna be some more fun on Earth later on, but mainly space bad guys. Involving space bridges and Liege Maximos and Liege Centurios. Yeah, they found a way to come back. Or were they actually defeated? Did they just do that as a route? We'll find out. We're not sure yet. Well, we'll find out. It's in the story. We just didn't read ahead yet. Anyway. This here's Clint Cowpok. On the set here of the Transformer movie, and we're going to do Neutral Alliance. Rob Powers. As we start off with the Neutral Alliance, we're going to cut to these Robotechs in this scene. We're going to see the Robotech Rebels and the Neutrals. Just right there. Boom. Underground. A little Bone Lean, a little Avibon Lean thrown in there. a little crossover with the Neutrals and the Robotechs. There needs to be... because the story begins with them having achieved the Energon Cubes but having already lost the ship. They don't mention the ship because it wasn't in the script. They need to, at this point, we're introduced to everybody, but then something needs to happen to them to have them land on the planet away from them. And there needs to also be, so like we did yesterday, we're going to film a couple of episodes involving this bridge set that's been then redressed as the SDF bridge set, SDF-1 bridge set, but without the accoutrements for the humans. It's just Robotechs. They haven't finished it, so so it's gonna be like weird sizes on purpose, and we're gonna have to get to see the Rebels finally. Tim's Rebels are gonna show up. But they are very fragile. So they're mostly going to stand there because they literally will break and go. But they look cool. So the Rebels. So that's what we're going to do. And then basically the gist of the scene is that the Rebels, let's say they'll guard the ship. They introduce themselves to guard the ship. Alita 1 and the other the neutrals from the underground. They somehow trust them, and because they're warbirds, and they trust them because they're warbirds. So they're like, okay, yeah, you can watch the ship, and we'll take the Energon Cubes and leave, and go on our little mission with the Energon Cubes, not realizing that they're going to get duped into like losing the Energon Cubes, and therefore, they don't get the ship back. The ship is still around though; they haven't left until the end of the act, they don't actually use the space warp until there's 3 acts in the story. So the second act, they use the space warp and they leave the planet. But at this point, they go down, not concerned yet that they might steal the ship, basically. So they're not concerned about that yet. So they're gonna that's what's happening here. Yeah. So let's set up the beginning of that. I know it's a little out of sequence, but it'll make sense later. We're going to do that, and then we're going to cut to the end of the scene. That's just before they return to the other ship. And then into the next scene, and then the next thing, then set up all 3 arcs going on. It'll make sense, yeah. Basically, each Transtech story can be connected to the last one, but in some ways isn't connected to the last one, or can be connected to ones very, very off in the past. I like to do each episode together so that it's all synergy, so you can watch one and not necessarily need to watch the next one. But we're hoping you do. This one is not connected necessarily to last week's, but only in the sense that the ship was stolen. And I like to subvert expectations and mix things up a little bit. So we have 2 of the Robotech people on the bridge, clearly, disguised as some of the robots. And we have some of the Seekers together there. And we have this team of rebels that was created at some point in the past that are behind the whole warbird thing that we indicated in the last episode. So it is connected to the last episode, but we reintroduced them in here, so you don't need to know, because the warbirds in the previous episode were actually others pretending they were them, and then at the end some of them show up and they're all, yes, we are the warbirds, they were pretending to be us. And now we get to see the warbird cast doing their thing. So even there were some pretending to be others. And yeah, the idea that the two Decepticon little mini jets, Thunderwing and the other are Thunderclash, I think, are supposed to be Miria and Lisa from way back all the way up to the last episode. It's a little fuzzy, so I decided here that I would kind of say, like, okay, yeah, Miria and Lisa have, and possibly Minmay, have come over with the warbirds here in their mecha. So that's what's going on, is we have the three femme Robotech ladies there on the bridge. Yeah. And that there's another femme that is another one. We're introduced to this whole cast, and yeah, some of the names that are similar to the names from the Rob Power story are in here. We have Peripheral and Ruckus and Nuclea, and they're three of them right out there. So yeah, and now they're going on their away team, and that's when the story starts. So this was just to introduce, building up to the story, putting them down on the planet. And now I'm going to do other scenes with this bridge set that take us again around the story, because I want to, make things change things up a little bit. So I'm going to have to look at some dailies. Yeah. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, so, yeah. Well, I have to explain it without a hat on. So, in this next scene, we got... this next scene, it's the end of episode 1 in this next scene. And they don't know what happened to the ship at this point, at the end of episode 1. So they have no idea. But we're going to tell the audience what happened to the ship. And then we're going to go on to see what happened to the ship out there during the battle in episode 2. The ship shows up again and get something that's going on with the ship. Here is a scene with this next scene is a scene where they are dealing with the STF-1, which is the ship they're on. And this is the scene where they're fixing up the space bridge, and they get the arrival of some of the other nighthawks. No, some of the other birds, the warbirds. Some of the other warbirds show up, led by one of the robots, led by the super ostrich one. He's in command of the operation on Earth. He contacts them to inform them that their mission is to go elsewhere to meet up with the Liege Maximo and stuff. So that's what's going to happen. That's what their mission is, to bring the technology to the secret forces so that they can invade. Setting up the story arc going on. This is essential to the plot of the story. This is just before the other ship footage in terms of where you would edit it. So, yeah. So the audience gets to see what happened to the ship. Then we jump to another scene that'll explain. Right? Werewolf Fussy Face. Yes, it's a reference to, I believe, the end of the circle and Space Bridge. That's Edwards. We'll just give that away right now. That's Edwards. It's B.D. Edwards. In this universe, he isn't dead. He didn't die in the Invid invasion there. B.D. Edwards. Yep. He's back. This version of him. Pull the strings, as Korloff said. Pull the strings. In the snips, snails, and big fat snips and puppy dog tails and big fat snails, which is a line from from one of the Ed Wood movies. I believe the corpse one, and also it's a line from two of them. It's mainly Glen or Glenda, but it's actually from one of the other ones too, because they just used Lugosi's lines. Not Karloff, Lugosi. That's right. Yeah. So. So what's going on here is we have Edwards and one of his cronies there. We're not sure who that is yet. And we have a plot by the Robotech Guardians, who apparently Galactic Guardians. Reference to Trans 2, love it. Warbirds is what they're called in this version. They're Galactic Guardians. Robotech. And we couldn't call them Intergalactic Guardians in this version because it turned out that there actually is a show that was called that. It went off the air, and there was a comic book from the end related to the show, and it was aired in the 90s, so we couldn't actually use that beyond the pilot of Trans 2 in 92. We didn't know. It was such a cool title, we should have realized, somebody's gonna come up with that. Somebody's gonna do it. Turns out, actually, Guardians of the Galaxy is very similar, just switching the names around. They're also from the 70s. I didn't know about them back then. We didn't know a lot about comic books back then. We even had a character in Fictional Adventures that was named Jane Foster, and didn't realize that was a character from Thor, the comic books. Because, not until the movies came out, like decades later, we didn't know the Thor comic had a character named Jane Foster in it. And it, for some reason, didn't occur to us either that Mary Jane is from Spider-Man, even though there were Spider-Man things. We should have known that one. There were Spider-Man movies before there were Marvel version of it. We should have known that. It was like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, well, we just weren't paying attention, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so the next scene is going to be toward the end. We cut back to the ship toward the end of the part where they going to go into the anomaly. This is the part with the anomaly. I believe that's the end of episode 2. So we're going to show the anomaly and what's happening to them. They're not sure what happened to the ship, but they see the anomaly happening in the Titans. And that hasn't been filmed yet. But I wanted to do all the ship scenes here, because this is the most elaborate set. Next to the other set is the most elaborate set. So we're going to cut to the anomaly in the scene and see what they're doing in the anomaly. It's not a very long scene. The pirates have taken over the ship. The pirates / warbirds taking over the ship. And they meant to do what they were going to do. They've double crossed the Femme Autobots, and they've double crossed the other ones, which is messed up. The other warbirds got double crossed. They're on the planet, and they're like, hey, I got double crossed. Peripheral and Ruckus and Nightingale and all of them got double crossed, triple crossed even if you think about it. And they're down on the planet. And we have Edwards, whose motivation would be different, because he's not against Rick Hunter necessarily, because in this timeline, Rick Hunter didn't get the promotion ahead of him and all that. It didn't happen the same way. So he's just being evil to be evil, I guess. But he's an antagonist, not a villain in this version. We have to have Edward show up. So it had to happen. It had to. It had to. This other time... okay. So I thought I would mention that. This act is before the third act, where Draconis will disappear at the end of the third act. So this is at the end of the second act when they use the warp. That's what this is going to be. So this is the warp part. They don't have Draconis. Somebody else took him. The Decepticons are not involved in this third party doing stuff. Yeah. Okay. The last scene is shortly after this last scene, shortly after the events of the basically there's no ethereal plane story in this one. Instead, we get the very last scene is Edwards and the others having arrived at the Maximo coordinates, and they get a surprise waiting for them at the Maximo coordinates. Let's see that. So there you go. That's all the Robotechs and those other spies. Bad guys. That's all the bad guys in that scene there. Now I can go and redress the set as anything else. That's it for this scene anyway. Now. Alright, so this is the newer camera, and we're doing a part. We just started into this footage is from is actually from the script. And the last scene was actually improvised and added because we wanted to make it look like the Dinobots were there the whole time because they appeared in the last episode, and it's like, well, were they around? Sure. And there has to be more Transformers on the planet. Otherwise, it's just the 5 of the Gestalt from Quanticons, as Rob Bowers saw them. And they're there on the planet, the Quanticons, and the rest of them. So we can't form a Gestalt in this story. We don't really, well, we don't want to. We could form the female Gestalt, which would actually be the Alita 1 and the others. We're not going to, though, I don't think. It's much more interesting to have them be their individual selves. And also, this story kind of retcons away the idea of Miria and crew being in Transformer exoshells, and kind of goes back to them. Interestingly enough, though, that Thunderwing is that little grayish Pretender bot reissue, and I think that's Thunderstrike is the other one. And that's of course Dreadwind is Minmay. Thunderstrike was the other one. They were sort of pseudo pretenders. In the comics, though, he was actually like the size of Megatron, and he was a Decepticon leader from long ago. And then in the UK comics, they gave him more of a backstory and had him hang around with Bludgeon and Skullgrin and all that. Yeah, he's sort of like Jyaxus, but in this version, in the later versions, he became smaller and smaller. He was a pretender briefly, too, as part of the Pretenders in the 90s. And then he became the smaller Generations one. The 2 little Generation Jets. They're almost like their kin or something. So I decided to change that so that they would be... Decided to change that so that they would be... they have the Veritex, so why not put them in the Veritex? And yes, so the orange one with the stripes on her chest is Lisa Hayes, and the clearly the black one with the red trim or maroon trim is Miria, and in this version, and we're presuming that the one who's playing Lady Hawk is her headmaster is a human named Lexius, which goes back to so it wasn't Minmay, it was Lexius. Lexius. So there's the other Fairborn lady at the end of the other one saying that she's Lady Hawk is probably not Lady Hawk. They just keep saying they're Lady Hawk all the way to the end. Either that or their real name is not Marissa Fairborn. It's probably that she isn't Lady Hawk. She's probably just a little crazy. She just thinks she is. Because they did imply that in the story. And so this one is kind of retconned, but not. We wanted to, swapping bodies and stuff. Yeah, that was always the case. We wanted to have it be less about that. And that was before the Wonder Woman 1984 movie that had the controversial body swapping. We were doing that in this show, and we're saying like, oh, it's a little goofy. If they're gonna do that, they have to like get out of that somehow. So I figured out a way to do that and make it seem more cool and different that they're doing in the Robotechs in there. So that's what I did, and yeah, so it had nothing to do with the other movie. It's referenced, I know, but it had nothing to do with it. So mainly, yeah, and they're the right scale for the fembots, so they're not scary. It's just another reason. But yeah, Thunderwing's in the script. The Dinobots weren't in the script originally, but they're going to be in the last act, so I put them in the beginning in the first act, and I'm going to pepper them through the second act, so they can be in the last one. Exile the Dinobots, but they're in here, so yeah, and so that's it was fun. So Miria is Nightingale in this. So Nightingale is her body shell is Miria, which makes more sense. That would be the character. Yeah, she's somewhere else at this point. She's around, but was she on the? I'll have to check. Anyway, so there you go. Yeah.
Okay, so for slight, real brief alteration there. Nightingale is Miria. Henna is Lisa, the orange Vertec. Shadow Bat was the black and gray silver camo. Nuclea was yellow and orange one. Aerial Flight was one of the sky blue camos. Air Flight was the one with a little orange splattered on his chest. Ruckus is the green, army green one, but not the other green one. The one that's not camo. And Peripheral is the pink flower one. And that's, yeah. I'm going to redo that line so it's less wordy and makes more sense for her to be saying it. So that's what's wrong with it. It's just too... What is that noise? This here's Clint Cowpok. Today was a full day of filming on set of Neutral Alliance. We nearly finished it. That's just part 1 of 3 acts. The next one is three other short stories that were raw power stuck together into one roughly 30-minute story. The 3 remaining that were in the can we wanted, that were part of this same idea, sort of sequel or prequel to the events of Corrosion of War that end. This story turned out to be about the underdogs and the minor characters. It subverts expectations and takes us to meet Thunderwing and Sky Shadow and Dreadwind, rather than having them be Miria, Lisa, and the other the Robotech people. The Robotech people have left and gone into the Veritechs, so they don't need to be these Transtectors anymore. So the Transtectors were given back to their Transformer personalities, which means that they were actually inhabiting them without their consent. It's messed up, but that's what they were doing. But maybe they weren't active or something. They found a way to activate them. That wasn't too clear on how they were doing that. But yeah, these are them. They're freed of the humans who were driving them as pretenders, and they're not very tall, so they're roughly the same size as the Femmes. But they're not Femmes. They're actually, they're apparently not Femmes. Or I could pitch mend them and make them Femmes. Probably should, just so it's not confusing. Yeah, so, yeah. But, and then we have characters such as Forsyth and Peripheral and Ruckus, for his Drop Jung characters. That's names are his, but they're not. But they are names of Transformers as well, so they're not technically, but we're listing them as his. So we've made them Veritechs, and we've given the Lexius personality to the as the Transsector in the host inside the symbiote. The symbiote inside the host. Yeah, we made her Lexius is the host, the symbiote of the Forsyth one. Forsyth, who in this version is not called that. She's called Lady Hawk, which is a nod to the other guy's character. So we have this sort of from the last episode. So we get to meet Lady Hawk, or a Lady Hawk, and she is intending to make her intent is to unite the Transformers, and under the Neutral Alliance, wink. So that's what's going on. So they can fight a common enemy in the Liege Maximo have figured out a way to come back. We're not sure how yet in the story. That is, they're hinting at that in the story anyway, that there's a Liege Maximo back there. So
So it's the comic books, the UK comic books, and some of the early Marvel stuff, hitting at this Leash Maximo thing. We showed it last season, and we had, and actually Halloween, we had a Halloween episode where they dealt directly with them. In disguise, but they're introducing us to the Displacer Cloaks, and Gabriel Kwan, I believe, that episode. He wrote it. We directed it, and so this case, this is all behind the scenes, because there's no other behind the scenes here for this one, so this is Rob Powers' story. The Neutral Alliance, which was one of the first short stories from the MUSH put in the. It was in Transect magazine. It was in it. So this is material we've read before. And a lot of it is just speeches and walking around. And we couldn't film the walking around and speeches, so he's known for that. So we had to rearrange things. The dialogue is similar, but in some cases it's the old, you can't really say that kind of thing. So you have to say it like they would actually say it. And it became a story that actually is more about the Fems and the mini Autobots. More actually about the Decepticon jets having been freed of their human symbiotes. More about them than anything in the story, which is interesting. Doing that. Finally saying, oh, we're going to acknowledge that was odd and we're going to do that. So the Robotechs are antiques to them. And they're like in them. But that's probably not going to be permanent, I think. It was always odd that some of them were playing the other ones. But changing out the 3 Pretender jets, that is permanent. They're not going back in those Pretender jets. It's fine for a little while, fine up to this point. So yeah, that's changed. They're back to being them. And they kind of imply that Min May and Lisa Hayes are kind of in trouble. They're kind of a troublemaker in this version. So yeah, maybe the Sentinels won't happen at all the way that they think it's going to happen. Do they even trust them? Does the Earth government even want them to do anything? Because after all, the original Robotech was 70,000 survivors on Macross City, and Rick Hunter and Lisa Hayes and them rose to power indirectly because nobody was left in command. That's usually not how that happens. That's weird. This version, no, that's not going to happen. Just like that. In this version, that doesn't happen like that, so yeah. And of course, there's not an invasion force of 4 million warships attacking the Earth that would have devastated it completely, and it would have been nobody left. The SDF-1 somehow defends off everybody indestructibly, which they kind of spoofed. Rob Powers kind of spoofed that in Corrosion, so it makes sense that Corrosion wore that in. So it makes sense that there would be a battle fortress in this one too. And it's basically a stand-in for the I think it's going to be one of the Fort Maxes that they get hold of. But yeah, the Decepticons are also up to no good, and the other Megatron from Corrosion is in there, the Cybertron Megatron, and he is also wants to unite the Transformers to fight the Maximo, but for different reasons. His agenda is, well, as a Decepticon, he wants to unite them under his tyranny. So, yes, and each character shows up. And yes, at the end of this episode, we have to have Rakshi get mad and storm off. So they can say, oh, we don't know where she went. She disappeared. Because that is at the end of the story. There are people storming off, and she's one of them. So there's 3 pages of a space battle left. And a ground battle, and we'll save that for tomorrow, obviously. So yeah, after they build a fence, so we'll see. They're building a fence, so might be noisy, so I have to wait until they're done building the fence. So yeah. Anyway,
So, well, I'm going to wrap up the Neutral Alliance 3 days later, here on the 7th. And then we're going to the next episode, because Neutral Alliance only has less than 4 pages left. So it's mainly a battle. And the scene with the other Gestalts getting together and what's her name running off, that's actually later. So, yeah, that's in the next chapter. So we don't need to worry about that here. So this is a battle of this episode. Let's do it. So, yeah, that was literally the end of the thing. And yeah, so there it was. A couple of minutes, just 3 minutes of screen time. There was a lot of exponential shooting going on. They did not say who the renegades were that were attacking them, so we had them cloaked. I know that's cheating a little bit, but they didn't say who they were. Yeah, so there you go. They were shooting from the underground. Anyway, so they'll be all right in the next scene when they get back to the ship. Okay. That segment was Flaw in the Jewel. About 5 pages of one of the Rob Jones stories. Flaw in the Jewel was right after the other one. And is the scene involving the Liege Maximo, Megatronus or Destiny, the fourth brother of Primus and Unicron, and Wrath. He is Destiny. And from the comics and from the UK comics, it's in there. It's in there in the commentary. And that's what they're building up to. It's showing Liege Maximo showing him. And the other stories already kind of defeated him in that other timeline with Unicron. But they're ethereal beings, right? They're like Invid, and they have dimensional powers. So some of them didn't get defeated, and we know that he didn't get defeated because of Scythe of Destiny and all that. So he's going to come back. So we get to actually see at least a representation of one of the villains and why he wasn't in the ethereal plane story last episode. Because he'd resurrected himself. He's running around as a really nasty bad guy. And he's the bad guy that Edwards talked to behind the scenes, which we will not see in this story. But we know that he talked to him. And yeah, so we'll keep going on for the other short stories that are in this collection and see what happens from there. That was that one. That was the reveal. And we were going to do it all along. And it was one of the episodes that was in the Transtech magazine. So, it's a short one. So, Flaw in the Jewel. There it is. Next. So, this one's called... Ooh. So, this one's called The Razor's Edge. Which is kind of funny because The Razor's Edge was a title of a movie. I'm sure that's not what he's thinking here. Because that movie started Sacramento where there was a murder. It wasn't really Sacramento, though. The original... I'm thinking of The River's Edge, aren't I? Okay, forget all that. Razor's Edge was another movie. Totally different flick. Sorry about that. Brain fart. Alright, so, yeah. And nothing to do with Sacramento. And nothing to... Razor's Edge was another thriller movie. Unrelated to The River's Edge. Alright, so, yeah, so this is it for the evening this evening. This is... we knocked out 2 short stories and a little bit of this other one. Maybe 3 short. They're very, very short treatises on characters in here. And it is related to this scene later on where they're on the ship and people are attacking them. In the original story, the Quanticons, Iso, Icto, Proto, Endo, and Nucleo, they're all, and another one, they make up a combiner like Devastator, 6 Quanticons. But in this version, we don't see that. In this version, it's the Fembot combiner, and we're giving up to the part in the story where Rakshi runs off. She hasn't run off yet. She has to be trapped with them. So we have to blend in the part where, well, they got captured off screen while the Autobots were discussing stuff. We didn't show them getting captured. It's not in the script. So I don't think we need to. Because they're not there, so they were probably captured. Maybe they captured the Autobots too, and they're all there. We'll see. But I know they're there, and at some point when they're trying to escape later on from the aliens, They will run it. Rakshi will run off in a hissy fit because their other ones are paying more attention to each other, not her. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. So that's this part where before the beginning of the day, we were like, no, that's going to be in the last episode, right? No, it's in this one. Because we're getting near this is the last act of part 2 in the 3-act play that's all the Rob Jones stories. It is the last of the Rob Powers, brain fart again, Rob Powers short stories in the collection. It was Razor's Edge was included as one of the Trans-Tech magazine short stories from a little earlier. It is a sequel to Corrosion of War Without End, so it features some of them, but I have rejiggered it so that it's Peripheral and Ruckus, 2 of his characters, and not them necessarily, but the Femmes from the Underground, which makes more sense. But their Nucleo is represented by Nuclea on the bridge of the other ship. She doesn't show up here. She's on the other ship. So I shot footage of the other ship's crew with that other character there. They're not part of Quanticus anymore. They're Veritex. And some of them are Fembots now from the other group. So they're different. I decided to make them different because it's more visually interesting. Also, all that weird existential stuff at the beginning has a payoff on this planet and this weird thing that's going on in Cybertron. The Galvatron and Megatron are probably behind the capture. Who else would it be? And it connects to the existential threat that's happening. And and the Autobots discussing things and being the Grimlock being kind of traitorous a little bit. Is a build up to Exile the Dinobots. So he put some of this clever little stuff in there. He included Leadfoot in there. And there must have been an earlier version of Leadfoot in the Transformers that was before the Michael Bay one. I think there was. Yeah, I think it was somebody else. I think it was was he one of the smaller pretenders? Not pretenders, but wasn't he one of the the mini another word for one of the the smaller mini Target Masters, like it's called Leadfoot. Yeah, so I think it'll do that, guys. just like the other guy. Not Crosshairs. The other dude that was the three Wrecker cars are named after Wreckers thing, which they in the Michael Bay version that shouldn't be there, like Top Spin and Point Blank. I think is the other guy. Yeah, Point Blank. It doesn't really fit there. He would be a Target Master. That wouldn't make sense. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for the evening on this one. I'm gonna watch the dailies. Probably good to make sure everything is working. Anyway, so that's the end of that. The Razor's Edge. They're yet again trapped in a Corrosion of War sequel. This episode was a sequel. Well, sort of a sequel short story. He was rewriting it, and he thought, well, I'm gonna. Yeah, so we used the Corrosion of War Without End, slightly rewritten version for the miniseries a year ago. So we used the slightly edited version. Uprated version with the more comments and less of these extra Quanticon characters who were barely in that version because he took them out. This one has a showcase of them. But again, they're cut out. They're actually changed into the Fembots and the Robotechs. For this universe, that makes sense though that they show up. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. There you go. Alright, so there you go. That was the end of Razor's Edge. And so the end of Razor's Edge. We have a few more minutes of tape on here. We can jump into one of the remaining stories on here. It's the last couple stories on here are Cal-Cat stories. So that ought to be fun. And then we finish this off. Not a bad filming, really. Skipped a few days, but it's not bad. So But yeah, so we will do it. Yeah. So I really don't have much to add in the making of, because it's just gonna straight on to the next thing. I mean, of course, we're not going to cop out and just have one bad guy be the Legion Maximus later on. But here there was no actual villain, so the representing of the other ones was like kind of already, yeah, so it was funky. It's like, well, we kind of added the alien god guy because he wasn't there. But the stuff about the light ones and the dark ones and the no racial context. The aliens just it was more like a like pseudo Lovecraftian, but not intentionally. So yeah, this lines up with what would be the end of the roughly the 60th page in the story or scene, or there'd be a 3-act play. This would be in Act 2. This is where it actually ran off, and yeah, so it doesn't quite exactly line up with what they said on the ship, but maybe they're just being cute after they reported it. And they're just like, oh, the party that we were having wasn't really a party. So I decided to throw in this scene here that just job where that bridges that and it says, well, that's just what they called it. Party as in gathering, not party as in party. They weren't drinking and smoozing and stuff. They weren't doing that. They were definitely not social distancing. Anyway. Yeah, so I think we're going to probably have to end this for the evening again, because, yeah, there's probably have to figure out a way to work this out, because the story is a short story, and so is Exile of Dinobots. So I sort of put some elements of what transpires with the Dinobots in place of the monster bots that were in the story, because it didn't make sense that the monster bots would be introduced suddenly in the story. An expansion of a commercial from 1988 or so, and it was like, well, what? Yeah. Yeah. So instead of that, I expanded the lab scene to include more of the what they were doing, reviving the Dinobots, making it a couple of minutes longer than it was in the story, just to expand on it a little bit and have them mention the Maximo and Draconis just happens to know them. So it's like, oh yeah, I know them. They're dangerous. Yeah, and I left it a sort of surprising there, because you had to have something going on. Even our own stories. It was not meant to be a large novella or anything. It was a short story. It was a character thing, basically. It was a commercial. And it wasn't meant to be expanded beyond being a commercial. Just like a lot of Rob Power stories that we just went over. The Cal Cat story that was part of it went over. So tomorrow we'll finish it up, and we'll do this story and this Exile of the Dinobots and kind of stick them together, more or less. And yeah, there's this weird part later on where they get Fortress Maximus. Decepticons capture it. Fortress Maximus isn't in the story yet, neither are the Titans, but there is that SDF ship that went into the anomaly. If Fort Max showed up, was that going to make sense? It's probably something more like they're going to capture a Titan. So they're going to capture something not as big as Fortress Maximus. That's a little odd. Well, we'll see how that works out. Yeah. And then we have to meet up with the other Jetfire, who is in the next act. And yeah, so... And then they all go back to the ship to give the report. And then that's the end of the story. Yeah, so, yeah, we'll see. I don't think we're going to go on with this one tonight. I think we're going to look at the dailies and see what all this is about. And then tomorrow we will definitely finish this. Yeah, so, and then we'll put it together. Yeah, Exile of the Dinobots, which is right after that other one. It's kind of connected to the other one. They both had Zarek trying to steal the city. The scale would be weird. So we were going to do him stealing the city. We just thought, no, he should steal his head first. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to show a guy stealing a whole city. So he has his head that gives you a visual, okay, he's going to steal a city. I don't know what that's going to do, because Cerebros is kind of a zombie at this point. But yeah, Jetfire shows up, and now we've got up to the part where everybody showed up and is returning to the ship. And that's essentially the end of the story. And then we have those other two scenes that are the final scene, and then the scene on the SDF-3 that came through the warp and ends up back under the water, kind of like in Sequest DSV, the final season, a little bit, kind of that same vibe. But I'm sure they were copying something called the Poseidon Adventure, and also this other cheesy sort of Race the Titanic show. I think that's kind of the gag going on there. Of course, they couldn't raise the Titanic, and there's not like a society of Atlanteans living under the ground, but the idea is that those Robotech guys from the other timeline managed to survive and to the end of the story. Wherever they went, we're not sure what happened to them when they went there. So yeah, they were all knocked out, as I recall. Max found them. Yeah, so yeah, so that happens later. But yeah, so there is going to be an Ethereal Realm scene right after this, because there usually is one. Except it's going to be a little different. Let's film that scene. Yeah. So it's not that they buried the gays because of the Hays Code. That's where that comes from, the Hays Code. It's more like the accidental bad guy got shot. Dude might have been bi. It's not really burying the gays. That's like oh, okay, well, he never actually said on the show that he was either way, so what does it matter? He's a transformer. So technically they didn't in this case. Like that other guy, he's technically, well, it's not that, because the Hays Code was like, oh, what that meant was that we would hide, in the 50s and 60s, they would hide the gay character. They would say the gay character in the story, we're not going to say that the two guys in It's a Wonderful Life are clearly bosom buddies, if you know what I mean. We're not going to say that, we're just going to imply it. We're not going to say you know, stuff like, oh, we're not going to say that James Dean, his relationship in that movie, he's actually gay for his friend, and he doesn't really like the chick, but he has to conform to the reality. But it's totally what the director was saying. But he couldn't say that, and then, of course, he had to die at the end. That's what that means. Like, the gay character needs to have a tragic end. In a more modern movie, 20 years ago, with Brokeback Mountain, did the same thing. So they're still doing it. Yeah, so killing Gaston, the clearly pretending but closeted gay protagonist in Beauty and the Beast of the remake, when he truly did love LaFou secretly, and LaFou loved him and admired him. So LaFou had to find another love. Oh my. But in the reverse of that, you have Frozen, where Elsa is technically the bad guy, but an antagonist. But she turns around and helps the village in the end. And also, it's very obvious that she is an archetype for a gay character as well. He doesn't want a prince, doesn't work out with a prince, never does in the story. So, yeah, he wants a princess. They didn't go there in part 2. They made her straighter in part 2. They screwed it up. Anyway, so yeah, yeah. So in Transtech, there's this hidden back and forth about the hidden back and forth in the closet. The characters, the trans fanfics, they're shipping, but they're like mild shipping. They're not. Yeah, they're mild shipping. They're not going to go into any rated R territory. They're just going to say, oh, these two robots that identify as male or identify as female like each other. So what? They're not bothered by that. Or there's a transgender one. They're not bothered by that. It's just there. That's what they are. They don't want to be hung on a pedestal and treated like they're the greatest thing ever. They want to be respected. That's the point. So there we go. Yeah, they don't need like extra peripheral. It's just that they should get good treatment, not be thrown out as weird or deviant or something. So I like that the Transformer story, they do these little asides where they throw them in this realm, and they're like, oh, in this realm we can just be free to be us, or whatever they're doing, you know. I'm not saying that about the Cowcat show, but I'm saying that about the Transformers in the story. Transformer story is clearly the Cowcat show is comfortable with its orientation. And Calcat, he swings wherever the wind blows. No, no, I'm kidding. But he's LGBT friendly though, and furry friendly, and robots are similar to furries, and that they're creatures that do stuff and they have emotions and feelings and stuff. So that's Clint Cowpok here, just finishing up on this here video film. And there you go. There it is. That should be the end of footage for this movie. And you can put it all together, make a delicious, lovely souffle of weirdness. A symphony of destruction and an anthem of agony. Yeah, so...